So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. As you know, we're going to be talking about ActiveControl 9.0 today, and some of the ways that companies like yours can remove bottlenecks from SAP change delivery to drive their business growth. So everybody on the call is on mute at the moment, but I encourage you to enter any questions that you have in the chat box or jot them down, and we'll get to them at the end of today's session. So without further ado, let's move on and talk and do some introductions. So I'm Aaron Reedy. I'm Basis Technology Solution Specialist based out of Louisville, Kentucky. I have 15 years experience in SAP development and solution architecture, and I'm responsible for helping customers achieve fast, frequent, and safe SAP change delivery. I will be facilitating today's session. Our more important contributor today is my colleague, Jim Duggar, who is Basis Technology's Senior Technology Evangelist. He is joining us here from Fort Worth, Texas.
Hey, Aaron, good morning, and glad to be a part of the team today. Looking forward to the discussion.
Great to see you as always, Jim. So a very high level of what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about how the cadence of business has changed and what the SAP bottleneck in that means. We're going to talk a little bit about how ActiveControl can help with that. We're going to discuss 4 key principles for change management. And finally, what's new in ActiveControl 9.0. And if we've got a little extra time, I'm going to convince Jim to take us a little through what's in store for the future of ActiveControl. So before we begin, for anyone who's joining us here today who isn't familiar with Basis Technologies, a quick introduction to us and why we're here talking about this topic today. We create software automation that helps our customers, companies all around the world, to change the way that they maintain and adapt their SAP systems. We do this by bringing ideas like DevOps and CI/CD to SAP. The company has been in business for 25 years now and was founded in 1997. And in that time, we focused on designing products purely for SAP. So we've become SAP experts. So this is very much in our wheelhouse. And as you can see, some of our clients that we work with there on the screen, again, distributed all around the world in a variety of different industries, we support them with automation around SAP change and development. So first, some background before we really dig into the particulars of AC9. Jim, what's been some of your observations on the forces behind ActiveControl, specifically leading up to the changes in this latest release?
Yeah, it's a great question. And when we think about ActiveControl, it's in its 9th major release as a product suite. It's been in the industry for a long time. It is absolutely a standard in both DevOps and change management in SAP. And at this point in that product's life cycle, it's very much driven by a combination of the market trends that we evaluate with each investment cycle that we make in the product, but of course, the feedback that we get directly from customers. And over a period of time, we've seen the kinds of forces on SAP that we've seen in greater software development. We want to be able to deliver change more quickly and support the business in a more present way. When they need a capability, when they need a functionality, being able to get it into their hands as quickly as possible. Of course, with SAP, especially now that we're seeing deliverables in the cloud and we're seeing integrations with other systems, security and keeping things up to date and bringing the new functionality that comes directly from SAP themselves into the environment is important. So being able to do upgrades in an efficient and non-disruptive fashion has become increasingly an issue. Now, of course, S4 makes all that much worse, right? Because we're doing upgrades on a much more frequent basis. But at the same time, if we're going to do all of these changes, we're going to do them more presently, we're going to bring more value to the organization more quickly, how do we do so without the change of risk? And we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but how many times have I heard, you're not touching my ERP system because the last time you blew it up? That an unacceptable answer by any measure in modern change. So we've got to be able to address that. The last 2 items here on this list, I think we know that especially in highly regulated industries, we have to be able to automate audit. We have to be able to do it perfectly every single time. It has to be much easier than it's been classically in order to be able to pull that off. And frankly, one of the great stories of DevOps is being able to know, even before the code leaves development, that you're going to have an absolutely perfect delivery into production and there's not going to be major disruption. So all of those, hey, these aren't unique trends to SAP, but they're absolutely being applied to SAP, and there is an expectation on us as IT professionals to be able to deliver them in an SAP context.
So we're in the SAP space where many large organizations depend on core ERP. I think we can all relate to this image as SAP release strategy often feels like we're pushing a boulder up a hill. So in my own experience, I see SAP as a challenge in modernization. What's been your observations?
Oh, there's no question. I mean, the number of times I've gone to a customer that tries to do a release in a minimum number of transports, piling gobs of object into every single transport, just to under this argument that's going to reduce the release complexity, right? So, I mean, those kinds of things don't work. We've got some architectural challenges in SAP, but back to what I was kind of commenting on in the previous slide. Hey, look, these pressures aren't going away. We as SAP professionals need to be able to deliver the functionality that our organization needs. We need to be able to do it more presently. We need to be able to do it with perfect reliability and audit every single time. But we can't let the architecture and the technical challenges of SAP itself get in our way doing it. And I think classically, a lot of excuses around the basic feedback, oh, that can't be done, have been used in SAP change and have been used in SAP software development. Frankly, it's not a correct answer. Now, if I look outside of SAP, right, we've got this long-running, multi-decade trend toward agile methodology, toward highly automated deliverables and change, otherwise known collectively as DevOps today. And if I go to an organization and say, hey, I'm going to build this software change methodology where we do things in a highly iterative fashion, release very frequently, do so in a non-disruptive way, and know before we press the go button in development that we're likely to have a deliverable into production that works perfectly. In fact, most of the time it will. And a room of people would look at me and go, yeah, of course you'd do that. How else would you do it? That challenge has been something that SAP hasn't been able to achieve, at least with standard tooling for sure, right? And so we need to be able to solve for that as well.
So, why is it that we're not able to reconcile these two issues? Why can't we deliver safely at pace in SAP?
But I think there's a couple of challenges here. Again, back to this idea that I just made of, this highly automated, highly iterative development cycle. If I want to write code in Java or C#, there's a litany of tools in the public and commercial market for doing exactly that kind of a construction and having that kind of a pipeline, what we call CI/CD, in software development practice. Roughly none of those tools will work at all with SAP, right? Architecturally, it's very different. How we promote change in SAP is constructed and fairly rigid by the architecture of the system itself. So we're not going to go to the public market and download, Git and Jenkins and be able to assemble a CI/CD pipeline that functions for SAP in a workable way. The way that SAP change is managed is quite different. For those of us on the call that are already ActiveControl customers, this is a known quantity. I mean, this is pretty well understood, and that's why we have ActiveControl in place. But what's going to be required for SAP, and really, what we're going to spend some time talking about is how do you solve for this software development challenge and this change challenge in SAP? How do you bring iterative change? How do you bring highly reliable, highly automated change to bear? And also, what are we doing as a company, that being us, Basis Technologies, to make this even better here in this ActiveControl 9.0 release? So we're going to cover that. And I think this is just at the crux of the problem. SAP is very architecturally different. These tools don't work. We need the right kind of tooling in order to be able to do Agile and DevOps in SAP.
So my own experience is definitely consistent with this slide. I typically see business demand for faster feature release going against demand for stable production environments. So why do we have these dueling debates about SAP change? And what are the consequences of each side?
So Aaron, I'm going to blame you. It's all your fault, okay? And the real reason is we as IT professionals have done a lousy job of showing the business that we can make regular iterative change in an environment and not be disruptive to production outcomes. And again, back to that, of course you would kind of concept. Well, I'm going to take an absolutely preposterous example, but I'm going to say Amazon.com. If I plot myself in the middle of a bunch of Amazon developers and say, hey, I'm going to make daily changes to production because we need to do things like price and quantity updates and device updates and catalog updates and all the other things that we need to do being this very, very large retailer. And so I'm going to design this system that allows us to make regular updates to the production environment and not be disruptive. That is not going to strike anybody in that room as innovative, right? I mean, that's what they're all. In fact, they're doing it multi thousands of times a day. But at the same time, I can think of many classic retailers that absolutely lock down their system against any kind of change between Thanksgiving and Christmas under the premise that the change cannot be made safely and it might be disruptive to the organization. I will argue that attitude is inherently wrong-headed, and it is absolutely an outcome of our failures as IT professionals. The truth is, I should have been demonstrating to my business all along that I can make iterative change on a very regular basis, and no one will notice other than the people that benefit from the new capabilities I'm bringing to production. This idea of locking down for a quarter is inherently wrong-headed, but it comes out of the fact that, hey, this is my SAP system, this is my business, don't you dare take a risk and blow up the place during a critical time like high sales season or end of month close or whatever it is, right? Well, we're just not doing our jobs as IT professionals because we haven't demonstrated to the business that we can do this safely and consistently, but there's a right way to do it.
It's a very fair argument. So, this is the space we're in here at Basis. So can you tell us a little bit about ActiveControl?
Absolutely. So at the core of the automation capabilities, kind of the pinnacle of this little setup in the story here, is we need a different kind of tooling to be able to do the sorts of things that all of our brethren in the software development space have been doing for decades outside of SAP. We just need the right tooling, the right automation that's SAP specific to be able to bring these concepts into our environment. And it will be no secret to those that are here today to hear about 9.1 that ActiveControl is absolutely the platform that does that. It is a solution that is specifically designed to automate change management in SAP, to automate and safely deliver change in that environment with perfect audit, perfect rigor, and perfect process every single time, and ultimately bring the concepts of highly iterative change and highly reliable change, that CI/CD pipeline, bring that concept to an SAP environment. So solving for the architectural challenges of SAP and giving us the ability to not only be able to have a highly iterative, highly present CI/CD pipeline in SAP, but also then integrate it with the rest of the world so that if we're doing things like delivering to the web and delivering to SAP at the same time, being able to support those concepts, what's called release orchestration. All of that is the base capability of ActiveControl and what we've been doing for years at Basis Technologies. Now, the exciting part of today, of course, is talking about some of the new capabilities and some of the new features that we're bringing to bear that allow us to do that even better.
So, Jim, a lot of themes drove the V9 release. Can you walk us through the strategic thinking behind them?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is really a story of direct customer feedback. What are our customers trying to do? If we evaluate the most innovative of our customers, what are they trying to achieve? How do they want to use ActiveControl? What are the capabilities that they're looking for? And as we started collecting this data and continuing to process this information about where our product should be in the future, we started to see some themes arise from that and some consistency across any number of different customers. So those basic things and a lot of the features that fall into them fell more or less into four basic categories, right? So this idea of agility. I have a solution that's ready when I need it to be ready, that it's already done all the homework that needs to be done in order for me able to take my next steps that have to involve a human or have to involve a software developer or have to involve a managerial approval. I want everything that I need to be ready when I need to have it, right? And we'll talk about some of the capabilities there. The second one there in that list is this idea of visibility. What is the impact of a change that I'm going to make? How far into the future can my system look? And can it make recommendations for me about what to expect in terms of disruptiveness or impact around a change that I'm making? We're going to take a look at a really cool capability there that brings a long needed functionality to ActiveControl and something that I'm personally very excited about. So we'll talk about a really cool feature there. Then flexibility, of course, is a solution that works like you want it to work. Here at Basis, we're not in the mood of prescribing to you how your release process should be, or we look at the complete diversity of industries that we support, everything from something that's absolutely tightly regulated, like an FDA validated environment, all the way to something that's pretty loose in terms of the amount of flexibility and change that it needs, say like a logistics planning application. So that kind of range of diversity, we need a solution that supports change in a huge range of different requirements for different organizations. And then finally, well, why didn't the product just be easier to use? A lot of times our customers have feedback directly to us about, hey, if you just put the button here, or if you made this surfaced feature work in this particular way, it'd be so much easier to be able to benefit from ActiveControl. So we've taken a ton of that kind of feedback as well and put into the 9.1 plan, and I'll talk about a couple of features there. So if you don't mind, I know we've got a couple of slides on it, Aaron. I just kind of want to take control here for a second because a couple of these are just so cool. They're so much fun to talk about. Super excited about what we're doing in ActiveControl 9.1. And let's kick it off with that conversation around agility. So I was talking about having everything you need at your fingertips at the moment that you need it. And this is one of the first things that we implemented in 9. So we've had feedback from our customers over the years on several of our features, like our deep impact analysis. And of course, deep impact analysis will automatically identify when you're missing dependencies or missing other transports from a release plan, and of course, keep you from making that mistake of not bringing along all the transports that were necessary for a given piece of functionality. Now, in very large releases, this can be a relatively long-running event. It might take a few minutes or maybe a few tens of minutes sometimes. And so customers have asked for our ability to be able to recognize that we're ultimately going to be providing an approval around that. Why don't we pre-evaluate all this work? ActiveControl, you know what transports are in the sprint plan, you know what's coming up next. Go ahead and go run the analysis for me ahead of time. So when I get in there as a basis person or a manager to provide an approval, I'm not waiting on that analysis to be complete. I've already got all the detail I need. I've already got the history. I've already got all the information, and I can go ahead and immediately give my approval or rejection based on all the same criteria I was always going to have, but I've got it right now, and I've got it at my fingertips, as opposed to waiting a few minutes to get it. So this decoupled analysis works with essentially any of our analysis, but of course it makes the most sense on the more long-running ones that do very complicated things, like the deep impact analysis. Let's grab that next one here. Okay, on flexibility, this is not the only feature that we put in 9 around this idea, but it's probably the one that is going to help a lot of our customers solve an issue with analysis they didn't necessarily want. We oftentimes prescribe to our customers, go ahead and use the exact same release process for any kind of change that you do in your environment. And of course, there's tons of benefits to this, right? It makes sure that you provide the same audit level, same rigor, same history analysis. All of those kinds of things are positives that you would want in any release process. But there are times when it makes sense to skip certain objects from the analysis because either we know they're going to generate alerts or changes that we're going to end up ignoring anyway, or for example, they're from third parties, things like this, where the analysis that we might run on our own changes just aren't appropriate in that particular situation. So the new exclude objects capability allows you to identify those kinds of third-party objects and those kinds of changes, and ActiveControl will automatically exclude them from the regular analysis path that it would do on any kind of change that comes through the system. And I think, Aaron, you ran into this pretty recently, right? And had some feedback on this particular feature.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience, especially third-party transports, and one outlet inlet, I guess, that a lot of people don't think about is, SAP delivers a lot of code via Z objects to the customers, and it's obviously not always under the same development standards as what my organization is going to have. So being able to exclude those and not have to deal with all the what would appear as an error or an issue for SAP delivered code is critical for using that same rigor for all my change release.
Yeah, maybe one day we'll run Code Inspector on SAP provided objects and send them an output, right? See what
You
they think.
don't want to do that.
I'm not sure what they think of that either. So let's step into the next topic around flexibility, which is our new API. So I'm going to talk about where this API is going to play yet another role here in the 9.1 release. But one of the things that has been consistent from our customers is, hey, we love the user exit API. Hey, we love the web services API. But why don't you please expose basically everything ActiveControl is capable of doing, put it into a RESTful API, and certainly for our more sophisticated customers where they've got already fairly mature CI/CD pipelines. They're wanting to trigger ActiveControl actions in a completely programmatic way. This enables them to do some very sophisticated types of integrations that essentially, if it can be done in ActiveControl, well, it can be done programmatically through integration. So in 9.0, you'll find a full RESTful API. Again, it exposes substantially all of the capabilities in ActiveControl and will continue to grow. And so this is something that our customers that are very much along the maturity line of a well-formed CI/CD pipeline, this is going to be a feature that's valuable to them, especially around change orchestration when they're integrating ActiveControl into change that's happening outside of SAP concurrently.
Jim, this is huge for SAP. I mean, I've previously managed .NET, Java, ABAP development, and the ABAP guys were always sitting over here in the corner, kind of jealous of what everyone else was doing with CI/CD pipelines, and there's not been historically a great way to hook those in. So this is extremely exciting for the future of DevOps for ABAP.
Absolutely, and the RESTful interface, right? It's an industry standard. You could go grab Node-RED or Tibco or MuleSoft. I mean, any of these integration platforms would be immediately compatible with this API and allow you to do some pretty sophisticated orchestrations.
Yeah, the sky's the limit on integrations from here on.
Absolutely. Okay. So this might be my favorite 9.0 feature. And to set this up a little bit, I'll tell a little story. If you're in a 24/7 environment, pushing a change is just basically asking, who am I going to short dump? I mean, it's a reality. If you've got transactions in flight and you go touching objects that those transactions depend on, you're going to break some stuff. And I know we all try to do this in the middle of the night. Everyone loves staying at the office till 2 a.m. to do this and minimize that. But at the same time, do we have really good data around when would be the right place to push such a change to minimize the disruption to our organization? And in V9, we have automated that. So we'll go out and pull workflow statistics from your production environment. We'll look at the contents that are in a set of transports that are scheduled for production import, and we'll automatically recommend ideal times that would minimize the disruption of pushing those particular imports and those particular transports into your production environment. We know we're going to have some. That's just a fact of 24/7 environments. But isn't it neat to know that you can automate the discovery of when is ideal, and that would be done completely dynamically depending on what's in the change from a technical asset perspective. To me, this is the neatest feature that we're putting in 9. Really proud of this one, wanted it for a while, and really excited about helping our customers minimize disruption of change as a result of this capability.
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite feature. I mean, I cannot tell you the number of hours that I've sat down with STO3 and SM37 and really, okay, when are my online users using it? When's my batch jobs kicking off? Trying to find the sweet spot of when I can deploy, and okay, how long is it going to take for this transport to import and all the objects to activate? It's a completely hair-raising event trying to figure out when you're going to do this. So to see that this could be done for me automatically is very exciting.
It is pretty neat. All right, and one last one for this. Personally, I've been involved in the SAP change space for, well, actually 2 last ones. I've been involved in the SAP change space for a while. And over time, I've seen the demand for orchestrated release and documentation around that become more robust and require visibility across multiple different paths and multiple different types of change events. So we've always had the build list report in ActiveControl, but one of the things we added in V9 was the ability to be able to see that across multiple different transport paths, or honestly anything that ActiveControl is managing. So for example, if you're concurrently delivering dependent change into ECC and BW and so on, we would be able to give you a historical release report that included all the objects and all the transports involved in that change across those multiple landscapes. So nice little bit of visibility, a nice little bit of audit automation, and just an upgrade that's very useful to our build list report that's already in the solution now. And now our final, and this is one I'm also pretty excited about. We've seen the adoption of SAP Cloud technology. We've also seen our customers ask for us to be able to manage not only change that's inside the firewall, but change that's outside the firewall. So we've introduced capability for BTP transports. If you're using SAP Cloud environments or using any of the SAP technologies that use BTP for change delivery, we now support that in ActiveControl, and you can create transport paths that look and feel and work pretty much just like anything else in ActiveControl, and provide that support for BTP change. So being able to orchestrate those changes together, being able to have the history in one single location inside of ActiveControl, all those kinds of capabilities are possible now as well.
This is huge. I mean, you see SAP kind of trending, moving away from this monolithic architecture more towards microservices, and really breaking out into this concept of clean core and being able to upgrade these cloud technologies faster and easier. So having that support for BTP is huge for these customers that are really embracing the new architecture and new mindset of S4 and what that really looks like in the cloud.
Absolutely.
So Jim, we've talked a lot about the great features in ActiveControl 9 and how it can help with my delivery bottleneck, but there's still this huge elephant in the room over here. With ECC end of life on the horizon, many of our customers are worried about how they can continue to deliver business functionality in ECC while tackling this S4 migration. How can we help with that?
Yeah, and for anyone that's not familiar what ActiveControl will do for an S4 migration project, we should probably talk about a couple of key capabilities. Obviously, ActiveControl has very elegant support for the concept of merge and parallel development. Anyone that's been through a retrofit cycle or had to deal with cross-system object locking knows about those kinds of pains. ActiveControl eliminates that kind of challenge essentially totally. So it would be extremely common for our customers to have a highly parallel, highly agile software development practice and not have to deal with the kind of challenges that have traditionally plagued multiple project landscapes and production support at the same time. So we're very good at that. If you're not doing that kind of work now, this is something that we can help you with substantially. And related to that capability, it is completely reasonable with ActiveControl to have BAU be ECC and project be S4. And we can move the transports that have compatible code between the two different environments, keep the project landscape, even though it's in S4, a totally different version of SAP, keep that in sync with your ECC BAU. And not only that, if you want to use our partner SmartShift, we can even dynamically remediate the code. So as you make incompatible changes in ECC, we'll automatically be able to turn those into remediated S4 code and keep that project landscape in sync as your multi-year, multi-month project goes forward to migrate to S4. Related to that as well, of course, you're probably going to face an upgrade cycle during the course of migration with S4. Change freezes stink. Nobody likes them. It causes all kinds of disruption. What if you didn't have to have a change freeze at all? What if you could reliably continue to make changes in BAU and not face the risk of regression when you finally went live with the cutover from the project landscape? So this is something that we can help you do as well. Again, these are all very elegant capabilities that have been in ActiveControl for a very long time, but the new features also help supplement those and make them work even more elegantly for our customers that are moving between ECC and S4 and facing those long-running multi-year projects and the challenges that are related to them. So let's not forget about using AC there. It really can help in many situations.
So Jim, this has all been really exciting and really great, but you know that I still want to hear more about what we've got in store for next year. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's coming?
Yep, and I think we've had requests for upgrades to our web application and web interface for a while. We have gone all out in the spring of next year. You're going to see some amazing upgrades to that capability. So there's a new Fiori-based web interface. It's going to provide for mobile access. It has a litany of features so long that there's no way we could cover it in a single webinar, but it includes some real favorites, being able to see exactly where change is in the project lifecycle, sort of like a Kanban board idea, and many, many more. Aaron, as you know, you and I are already using this internally. We're already taking advantage of the new capabilities. Don't tell anyone they're actually in 9, but they're official in 9.1. And I got to say, from a personal perspective, I absolutely adore the new user interface. It's just so functional. It's great, and I'm so excited about it coming to market. And lots of capabilities here. So we're going to do another one of these, I think, in the spring that covers a lot of the details of the new capabilities in 9.1. But keep an eye on this space because there's so much exciting stuff coming.
Yeah, I'm really excited about 2023. It's going to see a lot for the usability of ActiveControl.
Absolutely.
So thanks, Jim. This is all super exciting, and I really can't wait to see what comes next. So we do have a few minutes for questions, and I can see we already have a couple that have came through. If you have a question, please drop it in the chat window if you haven't already. We'll try to get to it. If we don't, we will reach out to you via email and with the response. So all right, Jim, let's see what we've got and what the first question is. How does delivery optimization by time work in detail?
Yeah, you hinted at it. It uses STO3 data to understand when particular tasks are being run, particular top-level T codes and objects and programs, and then uses that information to calculate the window where a change based on what contents are in the release plan and the transports that are being considered for implementation or importation would be least disruptive. So we're just looking at workflow statistics. We're then calculating best case windows, and then based on the technical contents of a given change or deliverable, trying to pick the best time window to cause the least disruption. That's exactly how it works.
Okay. And the next is, what technology is used for the web interface?
Yeah, it's I mentioned a little bit, but it is UI5. So it's going to feel familiar with the tiles and those kinds of concepts that are consistent with an SAP-based user interface.
And is the Windows GUI going to be replaced?
Ultimately, that's the case. Customers that know and love the Windows GUI don't have to sweat too much. We've got a deprecation cycle over several releases before we finally discontinue support for it. but we will be moving the full administration capability of ActiveControl into the web interface as well. And there is a plan to continue the sort of persona and role-based model. You know, if I think about the Windows user interface, it's very good for the release manager, the basis person, that somebody that wants that whole huge view of everything that's going on in the enterprise, versus, of course, the web interface is much more focused on me as an individual, what's sitting on my desk, what do I need to get done today. We're going to continue to have that personification in the UI, but yes, we are going to move all of the administration capabilities into that new web interface ultimately.
Okay. And is the ActiveControl for BTP solution all included in the same instance? Such as, can I see all of my changes, whether they're BTP or not, in one place?
Yeah, it looks like an additional track. So for those of you that are familiar with doing multi-track orchestrated releases, it works exactly like that in ActiveControl. BTP is simply a transport path.
And how long does it take to implement ActiveControl?
Well, a lot less than other solutions. Of course, this varies broadly depending on what kind of integrations that you want to do to things like ServiceNow or Azure DevOps, and of course, the sophistication and size of your existing SAP environment. I think this is a question that we might want to take offline, so I'll encourage whoever asked it to drop us an email real quick and we can talk through it. But it does go pretty quickly because the technical part of configuring ActiveControl and setting it up is not where you'll spend your time. My own personal experience with ActiveControl implementations is that you'll spend more time deciding what the implementation or what the workflow should be, who's involved in each step, what kind of security controls, what kind of separation of duty do we want, where do we want analysis to take place. Those kinds of questions, which aren't technical in nature really, those take more time to decide than the actual technical setup of ActiveControl itself.
Does ActiveControl integrate with Solution Manager or Charm?
It does. There's several different ways to integrate the two products together. This, of course, is also a very multi-layered, very technical question. Let's take this one offline because depending on what you're trying to achieve will vary considerably how we do the integration. That integration may come in the form of things like backlog integration or SAP change request integrations. It may be something more sophisticated like using ActiveControl backout, even though you're using Charm to do the import into your dev and QA stages of your transport path. So this has got a lot of color on it. There are multiple different answers depending on what you're trying to achieve. Let's have an offline conversation and understand that better, and we can make some good recommendations from there.
Okay. And I see we're about out of time here. We do have a few other questions. I will say if we did not answer your question in the chat during our time here, we will reach out and get back to you on that and make sure that we do get all those questions answered. So that brings us to the end of today's session. Again, if you didn't submit a question and you do have something else that you would like to ask, send that in via email or reach out to us directly with any other thing you've got. If you want to discuss doing a demo or an upgrade, we can get into specifics with you on that. Thank you, Jim. I've learned a lot today, and I'm super excited to see what our customers are going to be able to achieve with ActiveControl 9. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be sharing the recording with everyone who registered today. And thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.